I'm Jim Collison, and live from the Gallup studios here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Theme Thursday, Season 3, recorded on June 28th, 2017. Theme Thursday is a Gallup webcast series that dives deep into the CliftonStrengths theme, one theme at a time, and today's is developer. If you have questions, comments, or contributions during this webcast, we do have a live chat room that's available for you right below the main video window. If you just look down the window there's a chat room there. Love to have you log in. The login button, bottom left-hand corner, choose log in, choose the guest account, put your name in where it says guest. Hit submit. As easy as that. You don't need to create an account at all. Just join us in the chat room. Love to have you there as well. It also works on your mobile device if you want to try it through Chatwing that way. If you're listening to the recorded version or have questions about custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, you can send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strength Center, just gallupstrengthcenter.com. For all your Clifton coaching resources and training needs, you can also catch the video in both streaming and downloadable audio. For offline listening to all our podcasts that are available, we have hundreds, literally hundreds of them available for you now. Over on our coach's blog, we were just talking about that in pre-show. It's at coaching.gallup.com. Maika Leibbrandt is our host today. Maika works as a workplace consultant here with Gallup. A little bit of travel in her future as she makes her way from one location to another. But Maika, great to have you on Theme Thursday, and welcome.
Thanks, Jim. Great to be here. I'm so thrilled that we've got such a dedication to this craft and to this idea that Theme Thursday can even be on a Wednesday, because we've got global audiences who listen to us everywhere. So happy Thursday if it's Thursday where you are.
Yeah, Nicki is in Sydney, Australia, and actually I'm busy tomorrow, and we thought, hey, let's do this in real time. So a great opportunity. Nicki, thank you for being willing to kind of change times for us. And it's not too bad, 8 p.m. here in the Central Time Zone, so it's not too bad at all. But Nicki, thanks for doing that. I appreciate it. Right. Maika, we've got some things to talk about, though. First, off the companion guide, and today we're talking about developer. So I want you to dig in, and hopefully people have downloaded that companion guide and are ready to write.
Sure thing. So developer is in that relationship building domain that we began very recently. Developer really is about seeing the potential in others. And in many ways, it's about not judging what that potential could be, big or small. Folks with high developer love to see growth, love to see improvement. And in fact, potential and the ability to get to improvement in many cases is all that people with high developer can see. It's almost like that reverse of the aha moment. You know, when you discover something yourself and you just get that jolt of energy or excitement, people with high developer get that for others. It's this beautiful, almost magical relationship building talent that is being able to aim for other people's aha moments, and also being able to craft environments, to craft conversations, to craft learning experiences where those kind of discoveries can happen. When you read a little bit of that long definition that we have on the companion guide, you'll find great descriptors of people with high developer. When you interact with others, your goal is to help them experience success. It's my favorite sentence out of that entire paragraph there. And again, it doesn't have to be things that maybe other people think as being monumental. Even small, even invisible growth is important to people with high developer. Over time, people might seek you out if you've got high developer for your encouragement, because on some level they know that kind of helpfulness that you bring is genuine. It is fulfilling for you. It is really about an others focus, whether you look at it as an individual contributor or as a leader. So when we think about what's the extension of developer, that's sort of just the definition. What then does it look like in a leader? I was almost struggling with this because most times when I take you through this leadership extension, I just ask myself, what does it do for me? And then what can it do for others? That's sort of where my brain goes to decide what does it look like in a leader. The interesting thing about developer is it's already so others focused. I think perhaps the difference and the differentiation between being an individual contributor and being a leader is, as an individual, your focus is on other individuals. As a leader with developer, you can be more group or organization focused. You can think about expanding that developer theme, which in many ways makes it look more like it would fit in the influencing category of leadership, perhaps than just purely in relationship building. Developer is all about seeing potential, about imagining things that haven't yet happened, and about inspiring people to get there. And if you think about what that might bring to leadership, you can see how helpful it could be as a visionary, as more than just a mentor or a coach, but perhaps as a dreamer, perhaps as a different avenue of creativity that's more about even incremental growth. So I think about leaders with high developer asking themselves, how can we get better? What incremental improvement are we tracking? What should we celebrate? Where are our greatest pockets of potential? And how can maybe our clients develop and improve? Not only thinking about development of your organization or development of the individuals in that organization, but development of those who you serve. I think there's also an element of patience with the current state that developer brings, because the current state is never the end. People with high developer can see that today is part of a bigger journey, that today is part of where we're going to be better tomorrow. And I think that that can bring a hopefulness to it. It can bring some imagination that oftentimes I think leads to a great leadership experience. In many ways, developer can also be relentlessness. I think about developer as being really what can make you persevere, understanding that, hey, together we can do better, and I can see how. I'm excited that we get to talk to Nicki, because she also has Maximizer in her top 5. And sometimes we see these as being real different themes in the way that we need to differentiate between them to understand the theme itself. Maximizer is much more selective than developer. It really says, I want to focus on areas that are already good and I can see how that they can be better. Developer, in many ways, says, I'll focus anywhere. I can see how we can all get a little bit better. And I think that can bring almost a hard relentlessness to it. It doesn't necessarily have to be this soft sort of, I'll grow you, I'll mold you sort of thing. It can be, hey, we can do more. We can do better at all stages of the game. I think that great leaders with developer, they make celebrations matter, because they're not just holding out for the big, huge trophy or the enormous improvement. They really can celebrate and discuss and speak a language of progress. You should know, if you're a leader with developer, that you're picking up on potential that other people are not seeing. So understand that and be patient with other people when you might have a lens or a filter on the world that tells you there's something there in someone, or tells you an idea within your organization or an initiative has the power to be better, and that your voice is going to be an important part of translating that potential into investment, translating that potential into focus, translating it into how it lands with the values of your team or of your organization. Think about how your pursuit of something greater can inspire hope rather than discontent. We talk about leaders in a lot of different ways. You might be listening to this and think, I don't have any direct reports, so it doesn't apply to me. Well, think about being a leader in your community, a leader in your friend group, a leader in your family. A leader with developer always sees a way that it can get better. And in many ways, that could look like, I'm just never going to be happy. Find ways to communicate potential. Find ways to talk about not what's missing, but how much better things can be. It can be confusing for people who don't see it. It can be, you can sound a little bit like you're pushing the envelope. You can sound a little bit like you might be dreaming, or like you just have more energy, even in the face of a challenge, than other people do. So you think about, you could do that by aligning your values with development areas. Think about, rather than just saying, we're going to go for this next big challenge, talk about how that aligns with who you are. Talk about how that aligns with who you want to be known as an organization, or even as a family. I think also you have an important voice in performance management conversations. What kinds of things are we going to hold people accountable for? How are we going to define success? How often can we do this? Because it comes so naturally to you. Having a seat even at the strategic table for talking about how you could help other people have those same conversations is an excellent use of your talent. So let's talk a little bit more about those needs of followers and what that looks like specific to developer. A developer might help build trust by intentionally demonstrating your strategy in areas where you want people to develop. Simply put, just practice being a teacher. Don't pass up an opportunity to share how you see somebody could get better, and understand that they might not see it. And the how part of that conversation is powerful. It might be something as simple as saying, "Hey, I know you can't run a marathon tomorrow, but I bet I can help you, make it up that hill by the end of the day." A leader with developer might show compassion by discussing your own improvements. That might inspire people to constantly reach if they see, what kind of challenges have you overcome? What are you better at today than you were a year ago? Understand your own story there, and help share that you're not just setting the bar for other people, but that growth is part of how you interact every single day, and that includes your own self-reflection. A leader with developer can provide stability by practicing and clearly communicating the connections between improvement and success. Be predictable. Know that you are going to be that voice who says, if we do X, then it leads to Y. It can be so entertaining and so inspiring and so motivating for you just to help people get better. Others might not get that same jolt of energy. So you might need to help them make that connection between, when we get better, here's the return on our investment. And finally, a leader with developer can inspire hope. I could end that with a period. A leader with developer can inspire hope, but here's how. Seek out unclear, chaotic, or difficult situations. Help people imagine incremental improvements in those. Be the place where nobody can see how growth could ever happen. Show up to those hard meetings. Be there when those times are difficult. Show up when people can't see a way out, and help them see even small improvements. Understand that you've got this lens on the world that other people don't. And the secret to really investing in that talent and turning it into a strength is just finding the best way to share it. There's my overview for developer, a fantastic theme that really is about noticing, celebrating, and facilitating the growth of others. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today. It's lunchtime where she is in Sydney, Australia. Nicki Luther's with us. Nicki, thanks for joining.
No, thank you so much for having me. I love Theme Thursdays, and everyone that I speak to around strengths, I say go and download the podcast because they can actually help you develop. So to be here is actually an honor. So thank you guys.
Well, thank you for jumping in and saying, hey, I can be the voice of developer. Could you tell us just a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so I work for an organization called Stryker. So we're a medical technology, I guess, industry leader. So we have a variety of different products from, reconstructive implants through to medical equipment, through to neurotechnology, spinal products, and everything that we do is around making healthcare better and really enhancing, or even in some cases, saving patients' lives. And in terms of my role within Stryker, so I work in our HR team. So I'm a senior HR business partner. And what that means is, I work with our business leaders in terms of, what are they trying to achieve as a business, what are their goals, and really how do our people fit into that? So from who we bring into the organization, so I get very involved in the selection process of people coming in, through to engagement and how we really grow and develop teams, and then through to individual development as well, and then ultimately how do we retain our employees. So yeah, there's a variety of different things that I do, but that's the main part of my role.
Excellent. So you literally are saving lives.
Yeah, in some cases, yeah, our employees are, absolutely.
Excellent. Can you tell us what your top 5 are?
Yes, I have empathy, individualization, achiever, maximizer, and then developer in at number 5.
What a cool combination. How does developer show up for you? What's it really look like?
I think for me, it comes out in a few different ways. I think, as I said before, I get really involved in the selection process of when we bring people into our organization. So I do a lot of interviews. We're a really growing organization, so the amount of roles and vacancies that we have just continues to grow. And I get to be involved really in the final stages of a lot of interviews. And I think that in itself, I have the ability, I think, to see when someone has the potential to, whether it's to come into Striker or even the right role for them to come into. And then I think, as you said, the maximizer combination really plays in there as well, because I get even more excited when I see that someone has the potential to not just do the role that we're interviewing them for, but I can see that they have that runway to be able to do, 1 or 2 or 3 roles higher in the future as well. So I think that's a really key way that my developer plays out. And then in my role, I get to work with a lot of individuals around their development. So whether it's they're coming to talk around their role and how they can improve, or even what their future looks like. I get to do a lot of strengths coaching, which is absolutely my favorite part of my role. So we are a strengths-based organization. So everyone that comes into Striker does their whole 34, and we take every single person through their strengths, and then I get to work with certain individuals on an ongoing basis to really help them use their strengths to drive success in their role. And then I also think that I get to use my developer in the work that I do with leaders and teams. So really being able to, as I said, engage teams and help leaders be better, and what are the development needs of their teams, and how they can take their team or even the business unit or the organization to a different level as well. So yeah, it comes out in a couple of different ways.
I love that last piece that you said, where it's not just about making these business leaders better, but it's helping them think, how can they make their team better?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm curious though, when you are interviewing people, it's your job in many ways to be a gatekeeper, to be pretty selective. Is that ever difficult with developer when you're thinking about ways that they could be wonderful or ways that they could get better? How does that feel with developer when you're selecting people to join the organization?
I think that the maximizer really helps in that situation. When people come in, and normally I'm one of the final stages, and to get into Striker, it does take a while. They have a number of different interviews. So by the time they come to me, everyone is actually really talented. And I do see that potential in people, but I think also probably with individualization, I can see whether or not they have the right talent for that role, or even for Striker. And sometimes even just the other day we said no to a candidate, and I'm actually going to give him a call and give him some coaching around where I think he could actually work, not in Striker, it's probably not the best fit for us, but how he could actually improve and work towards his goal for another organization, just because I thought he was such a good guy, and he had a lot to offer, but wasn't quite right for us, but I still actually want to help him. So yeah, I don't think it's hard necessarily, because I do think it is my role to really keep who we bring into the business and make sure that it's both right on both sides, because the last thing I want to do is have someone come into a role or even into Striker and it not be a great fit for them. So I'd much rather them find, I guess, the right place that they're going to be successful.
You're right. There probably is quite a bit of your other themes there, but it also teaches me a bit about the extension of your developer to like stage 0, before step 1, developer's still there thinking about what's the best place for this person to get better. Not just can they get better. And I think that's probably a dimension of developer I didn't think about. Maybe it's that maximizer. What's the best way for this person to grow? That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So when you think about those 4 needs of followers, stability, trust, compassion, hope, is there any one that you feel is really tied to developer for you?
To me, I actually think the ones that really stand out to me are probably trust and hope. I asked my manager, Erin, the other day, I said, how do you see my developer play out? And she thought about it for a second, and then she said, you know what? She's like, developer is your woo. And I was like, what do you mean by that? I don't have woo at all. And she said, the way that woo works is, and you've spoken about this, Maika, in terms of being that magnet that draws people to them. And she said, that's what your developer does. It will draw people to you, to what you said earlier, because I think people know that I want to help them, and that there is that genuine care to see them get better. And I think that it really helps build trust, because, as you said, developer is really, it's about others. And I think when people know that you have their best interest at heart, then it really helps to really build that relationship. So I definitely see it in that sense around trust. And then, yeah, to your point before about hope, I think it absolutely does. I can think of, a number of different times when, people come to talk to me around development, and I do think of ways to really push them outside of their comfort zone, and have them think about things that, if they stepped outside of their comfort zone, that they would grow and therefore have that confidence to really pursue their dreams. Even just, I was thinking the other month I had an individual in our organization who really wanted to get into sales, and he was a bit of a younger guy, and he came in and we had a chat about it, and I wanted to find out his motivations. And then I was thinking about in terms of him and what he would have to do every day, and I said, do you ever get rejected a lot? And he looked at me, he's like, no, not really. And I said, well, to go into sales, it's the one job that every single day you put yourself out there to get rejected. That's what you do. And in order to know whether or not you're going to feel comfortable with that, you're probably going to have to put yourself in some situations where, whether it's from customers or, even in other aspects of your life, where you're probably going to have to hear no, and how you're actually going to work through that. So come back to me in a couple of months when you put yourself out there and you know how that feels. And he did that, and he came back and he had learned a lot and grew a lot from that. And I think, that in itself created a bit of hope that he could actually do it and pursue that. And then I think from that hope perspective, because we are a strengths-based organization, we have so many examples or stories where we have people move between different roles within our organization, regardless of if they have the experience or even in some case the skill to be able to do that. If we truly believe that they've got the talent to be successful in that role, then we take a chance on them. And I think that in itself actually provides hope for people, not just even coming into the organization and they see those different career paths that people have, but for our employees, because they get to see, I guess, role models or examples of people that have, made those moves. And I think that in itself actually creates a level of hope that when they see it, that they could do it as well.
Gosh, that belief in talent is in itself such a statement in hope. And I think I was working with recertifying our certified Gallup coaches, and one of the topics we're talking about is, are you truly strengths-based in your coaching? And I think even just how do you demonstrate that you believe in talent? How do you dwell in potential? How do you communicate to people that you've got something in you that is still untapped and is amazing? Probably something that developer has great access to. I hadn't thought about that, but I love that. What kind of value do you feel like your developer provides for others? Do you have any examples of what people come to you for, what they look for when they need to borrow your developer?
Yeah, I think a lot of individuals will come to me for general development conversations, and a lot of those do turn into strengths conversations inevitably, and that's really the framework and the tool that I use to really, I think, hone my own developer. I think prior to strengths, I really wanted to help people, and I had that desire to see them improve. And I think since I've become a strengths coach and really invested in strengths, it's really taken it to a different level in that ability to actually help someone get better. There are individuals that I'll help sort of on a one-off basis that come in for career conversations and development, and then there are people that I get to work with ongoing. So if I think about one example, there was a leader within our business who I saw so much potential in, and I'd worked with him for a number of years, and I said to him one day, I would love if we could do some strengths coaching on an ongoing basis, and that was based on advice that I got from a maximizer who said, if you focus in on a couple of individuals, you could probably take them to the next level. Like, it's great that you want to help everyone, but if you really continue to help, but focus in on people who you think have the best potential and you're going to get the best return on. And that's what I did with this individual. And I got to work with him on a daily basis. So I got to see him in action all the time. And he had great strengths, and in a lot of ways they would come out really well. And in other ways, we spent a lot of time working on the best way for him to aim his strengths to get the best return and for him to be successful. So like, he's a really competitive guy. He's got competition. I think it's number one. And, before he would compete on everything, and he was known as the guy who would compete in any sort of situation, and he really learnt to channel that to the situations that really mattered, and he would use it a lot more in terms of building his team and having that team spirit and seeing the almost being that cheerleader for the team. And when he almost like turned it on in certain situations, and people began to pay a lot more attention to it because he wasn't using it all the time, and they're like, oh, okay, he's serious now, this is good, let's get going. And he did use it to influence. And he's also really high responsibility, and he was he went from being a manager to a manager of managers to, I think, a manager of managers. And when his responsibility used to play out, it was more about that taking ownership for actually doing the work. And he really framed it differently in terms of being responsible for his people. And in some situations, letting his people fail if that's what it took for them to grow. And just in terms of how he built relationships, he was a guy that had gone through a lot and had gone through a lot of challenges and would always come out on the other side. And I really encouraged him to be a little bit more vulnerable and share those stories with people so they could actually learn from the things that he had gone through. And I've just seen him come so far as a leader, and to me that's so satisfying to see. And it's been great for him, it's been great for his team, it's been great for our business. So in that way, I think that developer can really add value.
Absolutely. Where does this come from? Do you have to sit and think about people's best paths? With this guy, did you know he's going to be a manager of managers someday? Or did you tap into did you have some intuition for what he needed to do to get better? Or how does that come to you? How does that happen?
To me, I think, when you talked before about that ability to see potential, I think that I do. Sometimes I actually struggle to articulate what I see. That's something that I still need to develop. I always partner with people with high communication that can really help me find the words to that. But I think, to me, I do use strengths. I look at we use Gallup profiles, so interview profiles for every individual that comes into Striker, and you understand a lot about an individual from their interview profile, and then coupling that with their strengths. Then every single time a manager or a leader or anyone comes, or an individual comes into my office and wants to talk, I pull out their profile, I pull out their strengths, and we have a conversation, and typically the answers are always there.
Mm-hmm. Wow, the answers are always there. I don't think ever say that, but I love that you're so in tune to it. Part of that is like we said, just having so many different ways to measure and access and expect talent, but it absolutely is your developer. The answers are there. The potential is there. I just see it. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. Talk to me. We've been talking a little bit about partnership in you coaching others. Do you have great partners who you work with who really honor your developer? And if so, what do they do? How do they make the most of your developer?
Yeah, I think that I love it when people get excited with me. So if I come out of my office and I've interviewed someone that is amazing and I get really excited, I love it when people get involved in that and get as excited as I am in terms of what this person could potentially do. I love it. Good partners, I think, are the ones that they're willing to almost take a chance. I've had a lot of managers in the past that, if I say, I really think that this individual could be good in this role, you'll often get pushback and say, they don't have the experience, or I don't think they can do it. And I love the ones that are willing to say, okay, yes, let's give it a go and see what happens. And then I think I just love it when when people invest in their own development, I'll have a number of different conversations around things, and depending on the person, some people will go away and think about it and maybe apply some stuff, but the ones that really take it on board and drive it, those are, I love when that happens. Like the other day I got an email from one of our employees, and he talked about the fact that 2 years ago, we'd had a conversation around him having achiever number 1 and context number 34. And, he often didn't stop and celebrate his achievements. And that was something that I'd really encouraged him to do. And then he sent me this email full of all the things that he'd achieved over the last 6 months, because he knew that I would get excited by that, and I did, and I was like, that was the highlight of my week. So I think the ones that really drive it themselves and make the most of their potential.
So it sounds like trust my instinct, know when to trust sort of my developer instinct, but also celebrate with me, get excited with me. Don't just let me drive, but support me in that driving, and then be open yourself. What a great sort of. It's like, of course, it's a talent, but you never turn it off. I love that part of that is also, hey, let's do this together. Let's turn this toward us as well as the people that we're working with. Excellent. Yeah. Nicki, when you think about developer beyond work, what does it look like in your personal life?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I see it a lot with my kids. So I've got 2 boys, they're 6 and 7, and could not be more different. So my 7-year-old is really, he's creative. He lives in his head. The things that he comes up with and the things that he says, I do not know, like, the world that he lives in sometimes. It's so beautiful to see. I'm always like, I just love the way your brain works. And with him, I think that I've really encouraged that with him, and he's really, like, I saw from a very early age, he was very into art. If I turn my camera, you probably see all his artwork up in my office. And, we put him into art class. He's never done, sport in his life. He, bless him, he can't really catch a ball, but he is absolutely great at art, and to encourage that, and I think really sort of celebrate the things that he's great at. And then my younger son couldn't be more different. He's woo in action. He's the most charming, like, 6-year-old you've ever met. Yeah, Jim celebrating. Like, I get home from work yesterday, he's like, oh, Mummy, I love your shoes. I love your dress. That's so pretty. Spin for me. Like, he says stuff like that all the time. He's a charmer, and he's an entertainer, and I've been looking into, drama classes for him to really sort of channel that effectively. So to me, I really I read strengths-based parenting, and I thought that was amazing, and that's something that I've been encouraging, just to, who they are as people. You see it already. I think I saw it from the moment they were born, and just trying to encourage them in the things that they're just naturally great at.
Nick, that's so good to hear. We've talked about that a lot here, of just with your kids being able to see. Now, you have empathy and individualization, which is dynamite for that, right? You kind of sense their needs. You see that easily. We too have spent a lot of time kind of looking at our kids, and then as they showed those talent themes, really get them encouraged to do things that we thought they'd really enjoy doing. And that really set an agenda for a lot of different things. I had 5, so we're all over the place with them, and they tried a few things out. But when you see those things, because I too, developer is 7 for me, and so I would find those things and then try to just little incremental changes. How does that play out when you're actually thinking about the development, the performance development for the kids and the things that they're doing? And they're a little young, I get that, but I know you're thinking about it because you're thinking about it at work, right? Is there anything with the kids that you do specifically to kind of encourage them? It's one thing to encourage them, to buy art supplies. It's the next thing to do to the next step. What kind of things are you doing, kind of, or are you thinking about to maybe get them to the next step, even though it might be a small step?
Yeah, so little things like, yeah, as I said, with my younger son, he's such an entertainer, and he's really cheeky. That can sometimes lead to being a little bit naughty, as well. And me and my husband were thinking, how can we really, help him sort of behave in the way that we want? And we enrolled him in martial arts, and the reason that we did that was because the martial arts teacher was very clear around how it wasn't necessarily about learning how to fight or anything like that. It was around helping them with discipline, helping them with focus, helping them with actually listening and following through and seeing something through to the end. And so, yeah, that was something that we did with him to really, I guess, try and change that behavior and sort of focus and channel his energy in a way that was actually going to be productive and help him learn some life skills as well.
Do you find that same technique can work in the workplace? I think oftentimes what works on our kids also works at work, in the sense that you might find an employee who has a specific skill that may or may not be directly related to what they're doing, but can help the organization as a whole. Are you able, or can you give an example of maybe where you're able to kind of pull that out of the person for them to help maybe in another area that you didn't see before, but the developer helps pull that out? Do you have any examples of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the beauty of our organization is that sometimes it's not even just about being able to help out in a different area, but it's about even moving to a different role. So I think about an individual that I was working with, or who just even came to see me one day, and she worked in our customer service team, and she'd been there for a while, and she was more in the sort of the data entry side of things, and she was an absolute, like, she was so speedy and so great in terms of what she did in her role, and she really was looking for something different, or to use her talents more than she was using them in her current role. And we sat down, as I do, looked at her strengths. She had achieve responsibility, which I think were really at play for her in that particular role. But then she also had restorative, she had analytical, she had deliberative, and we were thinking through things. And I just threw a very left field idea out to her. I said, have you ever thought about working in our repair center? So when you have medical equipment, it needs repairing. So we have a team of people that the equipment gets sent to them and they actually fix it. And I thought, we talked through her restorative talent and how that works for her. And she, talked through her love of, really fixing broken things. And I said, you know what, have you ever considered a role like this? And she thought about it, and deliberative, she went away and spent about a couple of weeks investigating and spending a couple of days there and thinking, is this something that I'm going to be interested in? Came back, said yep, applied for the role, was successful. And it was actually the most amazing thing to see. Within, I think it was about 2 or 3 months, the productivity within that team went up by over 50%. And it was a small team, and a lot of it was driven by her, because I honestly think that she was in a role that she was almost born to do. And so I think we're lucky in that sense that we can make those moves across the business.
Yeah, and her productivity may have raised everyone's productivity around her as well.
It absolutely did. It absolutely did. But we've got other examples. Like, I think there's an individual that's in our organization who's just such a talented writer. She used to work in our recruitment team and was so good at writing our job ads, and then because of her writing talent moved across to the team that writes all the bids and tenders for our customers. And so she utilized it in that role, but then she actually started for our, it was probably about a monthly newsletter, would interview and write stories on our employees on different situations, whether they'd pushed themselves out of their comfort zone or lived through something that we thought that other people could really learn from. And she was able to really utilize that writing talent to benefit our whole organization.
Yeah, those are some great stories. How do you, David had asked, how do you prioritize as a developer, and you're working with someone? Now you have individualization and empathy, so you have a little superpower. seeing the insides of people, right? So you're gifted in that way. But how do you go about setting priorities for that development process for them? Is there anything that you do when you're working with someone to kind of say, okay, I like to take this step and then this step? Are there any things you do to prioritize?
In terms of prioritize, I mean, to me, it always has to be about them and what their goals are and what they're trying to achieve and where they want to go. So a lot of the time it's, I don't necessarily, I think, give them the answer, but it's through, asking them the right question for them to come up with the answer themselves. So I'm not sure in terms of that prioritization. I think it's always going to be dependent on the person and what's right for them.
It sounds like sometimes you have to be a little bit persuasive with people, whether it's helping them see that they could be something they'd never imagined, or helping other teams see that this new candidate could be perfect. Is that something you plan? Is that something you think about? How am I going to get this message across, or does it just sort of ooze out of you?
No, I don't think I plan it. I don't. I think when you said before about that, it can be an influencing theme. I think when I get excited about someone, it's really, really obvious. I don't hide it at all. I come out of my office and I just get super excited around what could be. And I think that in itself helps with it. I think the other thing that's happened over time is because I've been here for a while, when I have said, you know what, let's take a chance on this person, and then we see where they go and how far they go throughout the organization, and people are like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe it works. Maybe we can do that again. So I think there's an element of that as well.
That's a great point to think about. How do you grow this from potential into strength? Is build your track record. And if you don't have one, if you're showing up brand new, talk about your track record. Maybe how do you help people really trust your instinct?
And I've recently just switched groups that I look after within the organization. So I sort of had a track record of 5 years in one part of the business and have moved to a new part of the business, and they don't know about that track record. So I actually do have to start again. And so sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. Sometimes I think they want to go against me and see if I'm right, and then they might listen. So I think it just takes it will take time, I think, in some situations as well.
You don't just whip out your developer badge and go.
I know. I'm like, developer.
Come on. Believe me,
That's right.
developer.
Certified developer.
Nicki, do you as a developer, do you plan for the success? In other words, when you're moving someone along and giving, working with that, and that at some point they're going to be successful, do you plan for that party at the end that says, we're going to celebrate this? When you reach this milestone, we're also going to celebrate this. Is that common in what you're doing?
I don't think it's common. I think where I'm lucky that as an organization, we celebrate success as a business all the time. We have more awards, over the course of the year than I think a lot of other organizations do. So there's been a number of different times when, someone I've helped or someone that I've really believed in has, gotten up on stage and won a major award. And that in itself is a sense of, that celebration and getting to be with them through that.
Yeah, at Gallup here, I think we might have taught Stryker how to do that, because we live that as well. And sometimes we award the awards. So it's like,
that's right.
You got an award, and then there's a whole series of emails that go around afterwards.
Yeah, that's the best part.
Everybody's celebrating the award, and it's almost like an award after effect. You can continue to get that. It is, I think, an important part of the development cycle, in that we celebrate these. Maika, you'd said in the beginning, make celebrations matter. And your organization does this naturally, which is great. Yeah. But I think developer minus celebrations, it gets very old very fast. And I think it gets people, you're telling people what to do, but there's no dog biscuit at the end, you're like, and it can actually, I think, stunt growth. So I think as developers, we need to remember that there's this very important thing called celebrating at the end. And if we're not doing that, we're missing it. And it works here and it works there. And I think for a lot of folks, they need to think about that and build that in. You just said how important that is.
I think so too, but I think there's also an element of understanding how each person likes to be recognized as well. Because not everyone wants to get up on stage and get that award. Some people just like the email. Some people won't even want the email after the celebration. Some people, want to be bought a gift or whatever it might be. So I think there's an element of knowing, if you're working with someone, what does recognition mean to them, and how can you really tailor it so that they do feel like they've achieved something as well.
Nicki, I'm curious, has your developer ever not worked?
Oh, I'm sure it has. Absolutely. There's definitely times when I might, help people through something or give advice and it doesn't quite hit the mark. I think there's been times when, I've worked with an individual, whether it's my empathy or my relator at play, where I probably know that they're not going to make it, but I still really, really want to help them through it. And I think sometimes that can be something as developers we need to be mindful of, just I guess how long that you progress through something, and I guess how much support you do give as well. So I've definitely had situations like that.
Nicki, has it ever been too early? That's been my experience. Is I've seen people and the potential, and you push them out, and maybe their wings weren't quite fully developed yet, and there's a little bit of cleanup, right? You kind of sorry, didn't mean to toss you out. But I'm sure as you think about that, those have been situations, maybe some of those where you're just so anxious for them to be successful, and they may not have had all the tools, or may not have had the maturity at that point, or may not have had the organizational awareness or the organization's acceptance, right? I'm sure you've run into that where it should have all worked, but the organization itself was not ready for that person to be in that place. And it doesn't matter how good your developer is, the organization wasn't. Have you run into those kinds of situations?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you see that sometimes with people going into leadership roles, especially people that have previously been in that team perhaps, and then have to step up into that leadership role, and you see that they've got the potential, and you honestly believe that they can do it, but whether this team was too large, or they weren't quite ready, or it was too far out of their comfort zone, or they completely changed parts of the business as well as becoming a leader, and it was just a little bit too much too soon. I've absolutely seen those situations.
Yeah, or the timing is not right. In some cases, I've seen great leaders who started a team and walked away from the team, and then the team needed again, and they came back, and the team had changed, or something had changed, and you think, oh, this is a slam dunk, and it's not. And I think sometimes in our roles, if as developers, as we're pushing people forward, we have to give ourselves some slack on that as well, to say we're not clairvoyant. You're not going to get it right every single time. And there may be some circumstances, and I think this is an area of development. You talked about earlier, this person with competition, they're not going to win every single time, and there's room for development in failure. Yeah. And so it's not always just about sunshine, rainbows, pixie dust and those kinds of things. But even in those failures, there's opportunities for those folks to develop. I think we need to be able to see those opportunities as well. In that failure, pull them back in, protect them a little bit, and say, okay, this is why I just had this happen with one of our interns. And I put her in a role. It should have worked based on her top 5 and some other things. She wasn't ready. And quickly come back, come back in. We just weren't ready for that yet. And so I think we also have to be aware of not just throwing them out there. How's it going? Checking on. And then if it does go south, how do we pull them back in and support them?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Jim, I loved what you said, is that there's still room for development and failure, which is why maybe developer never fails. Maybe it is just the best.
There's always a lesson to be learned.
For resilience. If you think about that illustration of like a ball getting squished, and if it's a ping pong ball and it's hard and it gets squished, at least a developer can say, well, it might not be whole again, but it can start to inflate.
It's tough with that maximizer in there as well, where you're driving that development and always wanting it better. And so there can be, I think, that tendency to push, 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 push.
Yes.
And I would think someone maybe even is strong in belief. You've got that empathy, but I believe in you. 6, there you go. I believe in you, and it's so strong. And there are situations where it's just for whatever reason, it just doesn't work. And so in chat, someone said, sounds like it's important to stay connected to them. And yeah, I think that is. I think you can't just set it and forget it. It's got to be something you're constantly checking back up on, the role of the manager to kind of check up on that and say, hey, how's that going? How's it working? I think when I make mistakes is when I don't check up enough. This summer we have 50 interns, and it's been a challenge to keep track of them and to check up on them in time. In the areas where it hasn't gone as well, I've given them all the tools and everything they need and all those kinds of things. Where it hasn't worked is when I haven't checked up on them enough. When I haven't checked in and said, hey, how are things going? And can we make minor adjustments and some of those kinds of things? So no, I absolutely think checking in regularly. And if as a manager, I think if you get spread a little thin, that's where you can start to say, oh, danger, danger.
Yeah.
I can't keep track of all that stuff. So I think it's super important. Maika, we are getting close to the end of our time here. It goes so fast. Final thoughts?
Well, Nicki, I think that there are, if everybody who's watching this has noticed, we've had a lot of just Gallup people on because it's easy to talk to Gallup people in a way where we know they're saturated by strengths, where we know that they've had those experiences with partners and with customers and with organizational structures that truly just pump strengths into every fiber of their being. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you and so inspiring and exciting to see that goes beyond Gallup, that Stryker is doing some phenomenal work in building and cultivating and growing beyond what Gallup has started there. And so we have been a great partner, but I think you've taken it to that next level. And I don't know if people realize what's behind you, but that's all strengths. That map behind you is all strengths. Yeah. And I talked to you this morning at your 4:30 in the morning, and you were just as excited about this as you are today. And, I am just so grateful for the authenticity that you bring to strengths. I think that has a little to do with the support you have in your organization, but a lot to do with who you are and your developer talent. So, thanks so much for bringing that. My last question for you is, because you're a great coach, because you're a great developer, just any words of advice for other people who might have developer high? Anything you've learned, anything you want people to be sure of celebrating? What advice would you offer to other developers?
Yeah, so if I think about advice for other developers, I think that it is so important to almost be honing your craft. Like, I think developers will always develop and they'll always be coached, or always be coaching. But I think to not just do that with your team, but look for those other opportunities to make sure that you are always helping to develop others. And I also think it is so important to share what you see in others. I think when you have developer high, you'll automatically see improvements, and sometimes you can think, well, I won't share that because clearly they've seen how they've developed, but a lot of the time they don't. So to be actually share what you see, I think is really important. I do think that sometimes it is important to to find someone to help you really, whether it's filter it or focus it in a really purposeful way. I think, as a developer, you could run the risk of spreading it too thin and want to help everybody. And I think, I've been lucky to work with fellow maximizers to say, you know what, keep helping, but then really choose some people that you're going to see have the most impact or are going to change your business or your team the most. And I think that was really, really valuable advice. And I think my final advice is, don't forget your own development. I think because as a developer, it's focused on others. And sometimes we can forget that, we also need to be developed too. And that can, I think you said before, that can actually be inspiring for other people as well. So yeah, those would be my words of advice.
Awesome. Thanks, Nicki. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for spreading the great word of talent and strength. And thanks for all the great work that you're doing.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
It's been great having you. I'll say thanks as well. And I will say, you mentioned Stryker. They are a great example. We get questions all the time about what are organizations that are strength-based that, and Stryker is one of them. And so you guys represent us very, very well. And you are a great testimony, including, and sometime we'll have to hear the story of the board behind you. We didn't really get a chance to get in depth. Everybody, by the way, has their own in the way they do it. And so we'll have to have you back on at some point and hear how you're using that above you. So I appreciate you coming on. We'll remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strength Center. Just GallupStrengthsCenter.com. Send us your questions or comments. If you'd like to be a guest blogger, we do consider those as well. We're looking for 400 to 600 words, fully formed original content. If you got something in your brain that you want to get out, type it out, send it to us, coaching@gallup.com, and put guest blogger in the subject line when you send that in. That'll come to Maika, and we'll consider that for the coaches blog. If you haven't been out to the coaches blog in a while, you might want to check it out. Chances are it's been changed by the time you get out there, some new additions to it. Coaching.gallup.com. If you're interested in becoming a Gallup certified strengths coach, you can see a complete list of all our courses that lead to that on our courses site. We don't make this very difficult. Courses.gallup.com will get you there. And there's a contact form right there if you have any questions on that page as well. If you found this helpful, we'd ask that you share it. By the way, we're very, very close to the Clifton Strengths Summit. And so if you are thinking, if you're in the United States, I guess anywhere in the world, you can still pull it off. July 17th, 18th, and 19th of 2017. There are still spots for you if you want to join us there. We'd love to have you come out here to Omaha and join us. Check out CliftonStrengthsSummit.com for all that information. If you found this helpful, we'd ask that you share it. I want to thank everyone for joining us today or this afternoon or this evening. And with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.